It started with a scream, not hers, not mine, but my mother's. High-pitched, raw, slicing through the dining room like glass through skin. I hadn't even turned around yet. I was still holding the carving knife over the turkey, my hand trembling just slightly, not from fear, but from something colder, deeper. The moment right before everything shatters has its own silence, you know? The kind that coats your lungs and keeps you from breathing. That's what Thanksgiving felt like that year. There were 21 people in the house. 21 witnesses to the exact second my life split down the middle. My wife, Samantha, was standing across from me, next to the fireplace, holding her wine glass like a trophy. She had on that red silk blouse, the one she always wore when she wanted attention. Her makeup was perfect, her smile sharper than the carving knife in my hand. She leaned in closer to my father and whispered something, then laughed that fake laugh she'd perfected over the years. I didn't hear what she said, but it made his face drop. I knew then, tonight wasn't going to end with pumpkin pie. My little niece was the one who unknowingly lit the fuse. She asked Samantha if I was the one who bought her the bracelet she was showing off. A gold one with tiny diamonds. The kind I could never afford, not with the bills and loans and Samantha's never-ending demands. Samantha's eyes twitched. She held the bracelet out, flashed it under the light like she was on some shopping network, and said, "Oh, honey, this? No, he could never buy me this." Then she looked at me, straight at me, and added, "Some things you get from real men." The room cracked in half. Someone dropped a glass. My cousin coughed to cover the silence. I felt it in my gut, like ice water in my veins. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just turned back to the turkey, sliced too hard, and ripped the skin unevenly. I was trying to keep it together, trying to get through dinner. But Samantha wasn't finished. Oh no, not her. She lived for spectacle. She clinked her glass with a fork. "Everyone," she said, raising her voice like a queen addressing her peasants. "I have an announcement." I didn't turn around. I kept cutting. White meat, dark meat, I wasn't even sure anymore. I just needed something to do with my hands. "I've been accepted into Johns Hopkins for my surgical residency," she declared. A few people clapped. Others exchanged glances. She'd already told everyone weeks ago. It wasn't news. But she wasn't done. "And," she added, taking a step toward me, "I'll be moving alone." Silence. I turned around, finally. The knife still in my hand, covered in meat juice and gravy. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Alone?" She smirked. "Yes, David. Alone. You didn't think I was dragging your unemployed ass across the country, did you?" That was the moment. Everything slowed. I don't remember letting go of the knife, but I heard it clatter to the floor. My sister gasped. My uncle stood up, confused. Samantha took another step closer and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Honestly, I've been carrying you for years. It's pathetic." And then she slapped me. Open hand. Right cheek. Loud. Public. Brutal. Everyone froze. No one moved. Even the kids were silent. She just stood there, breathing hard, drunk on power. And when I didn't react, when I didn't yell or curse or raise a finger, she looked disappointed. That's when I saw it. This wasn't a meltdown. This was planned. She wanted to humiliate me. In front of everyone. In front of my family. And it worked. I left. I walked out the front door, stepped into the freezing night with nothing but my phone and my keys, and got in my car. I didn't even drive home. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take clothes or cash, or even my toothbrush. I just drove. 10 hours. Then 20. I crossed 3 states before the sun came up again. Somewhere in Kentucky, I parked at a rest stop and stared into the dawn, my face still red, my chest still cracked open. She thought she broke me. She didn't know what she actually did. Because buried in our prenup, something she never read all the way through, was a clause. A single line that would eventually cost her everything. And now, 7 years later, I'm back. And guess what? That Thanksgiving invite she sent out last month? She doesn't know yet. It was for me. The flight touched down in Charleston just past midnight. Rain whipped across the runway, rattling against the windows like a warning. I sat in first class, untouched whiskey beside me, eyes fixed on the tarmac as if it might open up and swallow me before I stepped back into the place I once called home. 7 years gone. 7 years rebuilding myself from the ashes of that slap, that night, that woman. Samantha had no idea I'd even left the country, let alone built an empire overseas. No one did. After I vanished, I went dark. No social media, no contact with family. I made sure even my legal name disappeared. David Jameson died that night. In his place was Daniel Hartley, investor, owner of 9 shell corporations, for tech patents, and a damn good poker face. The invite came 2 weeks ago. An email, addressed to Mr. Daniel Hartley, family friend. It was for a grand Thanksgiving banquet being held at the same house. My brother's place. Only this time, the host wasn't him. It was her. Samantha Jameson. Dr. Samantha Jameson, according to the flowery invitation. I stared at that name for a long time. Felt it press against my chest like a bruise I thought had healed. Why now? Why this year? Then I saw the list of guests. Doctors, real estate developers, a judge, 1 state senator, and me. I wasn't even on her radar. She had no clue that Daniel Hartley she was inviting was the man she publicly humiliated and tossed aside like trash on the front lawn. She was trying to impress someone, or a lot of someone's. The guest list read like a networking fantasy. Old money, new money, connections she'd never have reached if life had gone the way she expected. And I knew something then. Something delicious. She was desperate. You don't throw Thanksgiving parties for judges and senators unless you're drowning. I dug into public records the next morning. She had sold her condo 3 years ago. Her residency didn't lead to a real surgical position. Lawsuit pending. Malpractice settled quietly. 2 cars repossessed. Her name wasn't on any recent property in Charleston. She was renting, under a friend's name. And the house. My brother's house. He didn't live there anymore. He moved to Vermont. But the property never changed hands. Which meant she was squatting. Or worse, begging. She had nothing. But she still had the party. Still had the mask. Still had the claws out. I rented a car under the alias. Checked into a high-end hotel. Spent 2 days wandering the city in silence, watching it breathe without me. Some things were exactly the same. Others felt like echoes of a place I once knew. My old barber shop was gone. The bookstore where I proposed to her, leveled. A coffee chain in its place now. She erased me. But not quite. Because I still knew things she didn't. Like that clause I'd buried in our prenup. The one she never cared to read after her lawyers skimmed it and laughed. The one that said, in the event of public humiliation, documented and witnessed, she forfeited all shared assets and future claim to my earnings. And that clause? It was triggered the second she slapped me in front of a house full of people. I never filed the paperwork. Not then. I was too shattered. Too numb. I needed to vanish first. To rebuild. To become someone who could burn her world down and never blink. Now I was ready. She wanted a show. I'd give her one. I'd walk into that Thanksgiving banquet wearing a $1,000 suit, shake hands with the senator, laugh with the judge, and lock eyes with the woman who thought I was buried and gone. And when she realized who I was, when her blood turned to ice and her voice caught in her throat, that would be the real Thanksgiving, the one I came back for. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I made the call. A private investigator I'd worked with in Prague, discreet, brutal, and absolutely legal. I asked for a full report on Samantha's last 12 months. Bank accounts, medical licenses, credit cards, apartment leases, known associates, lovers. Yes, lovers. She always needed someone to orbit around her. The center of attention was never enough. She needed control, adoration, sacrifice. I knew the patterns. The lipstick on her collar that wasn't hers. The text at 2 a.m. from the hospital, she'd say. As if hospitals had room service and candlelight. She'd been with at least 3 different men in the last year. All wealthier than her. All younger than me. One was her lawyer, how poetic. Another, an attending physician in Atlanta who she clung to for 6 months before his wife exposed everything and destroyed both their careers. The third? That one made me sit down. It was my nephew, 23, newly divorced. My sister's son. I stared at the photo in the report for a long time. Her on his lap, his hand too high on her thigh. Both of them drunk, wrapped in holiday lights at some downtown rooftop party she wasn't invited to, yet somehow crashed and dominated. It wasn't even about love for her. It was about leverage. He had a trust fund. And now? It was gone. His mother, my sister, cut him off the moment the photos surfaced. He'd been living in Samantha's guest room for the past 3 months. According to the PI, she made him drive her to appointments and foot grocery bills. She was circling the drain. And now she was throwing one last perfect dinner to pretend everything was just fine. But I knew something she didn't. The house wasn't hers. My brother bought it outright, yes. But he sold it to me 2 years ago, when he moved. Through a quiet LLC. I never changed the exterior. Never raised rent. I just watched from a distance, amused as Samantha repainted the shutters and posted proud selfies on Instagram in front of her house. She never thought to check the records, because she assumed the world owed her permanence. So I waited, watched, counted the days. And then it happened, one more twist in the spiral. The banquet list changed. The senator declined. A developer canceled. Even the judge bowed out. 3 names were scratched off the original digital invite. But my name? Still there. She didn't realize the gravity of that. She didn't know that Daniel Hartley, the quiet investor she begged to attend so she could pitch her nonprofit idea for a women's clinic, was me. She wanted funding. She thought I was just another rich fool she could dazzle with stories of saving lives and new beginnings. But I wasn't here to invest. I was here to collect. The doorbell rang at noon on Thanksgiving Day. Room service. Filet mignon, not turkey. I ate in silence, staring out the window of my hotel suite while the rain softened the city below. I could feel it, the anticipation curling in my chest, like the deep breath before a storm. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The graying beard, the sharper jawline, the way I carried silence like a weapon now, not a wound. I buttoned the charcoal jacket, fixed my cufflinks, polished shoes. By the time I stepped out into the hall, the only thing that remained of the man she slapped was the faint scar on my cheek. Barely visible, but I knew it was there. That scar wasn't weakness. It was the receipt. And tonight, I was cashing in. The air outside was electric. Charleston's humidity clung to everything, even in late November. It was just after 5 when I pulled up in the rented Bentley, matte black, windows tinted, engine humming like a restrained animal. I didn't valet it. I didn't want anyone touching it. I wanted control. Every single detail of this night had to go exactly as planned. She had decorated the outside of the house like it was being sold to a magazine. Twinkling warm lights wrapped around the porch railings. 24 pumpkins lined the path, perfectly symmetrical, fake frost dusting their tops like it was Vermont in December, not South Carolina in autumn. The front door was wide open, music bleeding into the night, jazz, old school, the kind Samantha never used to care for when she was with me. Now, it was curated, refined. She was building a lie she could live inside. I stood at the gate, took a breath, and heard it. Her voice. That unmistakable performative laugh, sharp and brittle, floating through the air like perfume. And of course, he said the grant was practically mine. All I had to do was pitch it right. You know how these things go. Then, another voice, deeper, nervous. Is he coming tonight? That investor? The one you mentioned? A pause. Daniel Hartley, she said, smooth as poison. He RSVP'd, yes. I smiled. She still didn't know. I stepped through the gate and onto the walkway, each step slow, deliberate. A couple walked past me, guests leaving early? Or just not bold enough to stay for whatever show was about to unfold. Their eyes glanced at me, lingered a second, then kept moving. I reached the porch. She was visible through the window, flushed cheeks, wine glass tilted, her signature tilt of the head when she was trying to seem charming. That damn red silk blouse again. A callback to my execution night. She hadn't changed the battlefield. She'd only rebuilt the stage. Inside, people were milling about, most in cocktail attire, chatting over mini quiches and overpriced hors d'oeuvres. The catering was obvious. She never cooked a day in her life. Not even on holidays. It was all show. Expensive taste, zero substance. And then, Daniel, my brother's old neighbor, Craig, spotted me. Bald now. Glasses thicker. Still nosy. I gave him a short nod. Evening. He looked confused. You're here for Sam's thing? Invited, I said, and walked past him before he could place the face behind the name. Her back was to me. She was mid-story, performing again, talking about some surgical rotation she supervised. Absolute fiction. She'd been dropped from her last hospital gig a year ago after a botched gallbladder operation nearly killed someone. Settled quietly. Record sealed. But I'd seen it. Every document. Every NDA. Every signed check. She thought it was buried. I stepped closer, and finally, she turned. Her eyes met mine. She didn't recognize me at first. There was a flicker of confusion, then suspicion, then, ever so slightly, panic. "Daniel Hartley," I said. Her wine glass wobbled. "Oh, Mr. Hartley," she said, composing herself like a crumbling statue. "Well, you're early." "Right on time," I said. The silence around us grew. People were noticing. Faces turned. Conversation slowed. A few caught the odd electricity between us, but no one knew why yet. I looked around. "Nice house." She flinched. "It's not mine," she said too quickly, voice a pitch too high. "I'm staying here." My friend moved. "Must be a generous friend," I replied. She forced a smile. "It's complicated." I leaned in, close enough for her to smell the truth on my breath. "A lot of things are about to get complicated, Samantha." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Then I stepped back, looked past her, and loudly said, "Where should I set up?" I brought documents. That got everyone's attention. A cluster of men in suits shifted toward me. A woman I didn't recognize leaned forward with interest. Samantha's face drained a shade lighter. She was cornered. Right here, right now, in the home she pretended was hers, surrounded by the people she meant to impress. She thought this night was about charming an investor. She had no idea. It was her reckoning. And I was just getting started. The living room swelled with anticipation. You could feel it, the weight of unsaid things, the unspoken tension that thickened the air with every passing second. I stood at the center of it all, unmoving, calm. Samantha hovered at the edge of the rug, a smile glued to her face, but her eyes betrayed her. They darted from me to the guests, scanning for support, trying to regain control of the room she no longer owned. I dropped the leather folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a satisfying thud. Heads turned. Conversations went flat. A few guests exchanged quick glances, the kind you give when something's wrong, but you're not sure if it's polite to watch. "Mr. Hartley," she started again, voice still sugary but thinner now, hollow, "why don't we step into the study?" I'm sure you'd prefer to go over your documents in private." Private. Of course she wanted privacy. That's where she'd always done her best work. Behind doors, behind backs, in silence. "I think we're fine here," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "You invited me to your Thanksgiving, didn't you?" She froze. A man in a navy blazer stepped forward and tried to break the tension. "Daniel, is it?" "I'm Councilman Rhodes. Samantha mentioned you might be interested in her foundation." "She did," I replied without looking at him. "But I'm not here to donate. I'm here to disclose." Samantha's entire body stiffened. Her glass trembled slightly in her hand. "I'm sorry," he asked, chuckling politely. I opened the folder. Inside, a neatly clipped stack of papers. Originals. Copies. Photos. One document with a legal seal in the corner that shimmered under the chandelier. I pulled it out slowly and placed it on the table for all to see. Then another. Then the photos. And then I said it. "I own this house." Someone in the back laughed, not realizing I wasn't joking. "I bought it 2 years ago under an LLC. Check the records." And while Samantha's been posing for Instagram shoots in front of it, she's been, let's say, unaware of who's really footing the bill. The room went still. Samantha tried to speak, but no words came out. Her jaw opened, then shut. Her eyes scanned the papers like they might vanish if she blinked hard enough. I wasn't finished. I laid down a color printout, one of the PI's photos. Her and my nephew, wrapped in holiday lights, champagne in hand, clearly not just roommates. "You know, it's funny," I said, turning to her. "Back when we were married, you used to accuse me of holding you back. I think your exact words were, 'You're dead weight on my heels.' But here you are, broke, jobless, living in a house you don't own, burning through trust fund boys like candles on a cake." Her face flushed deep red. Her grip on the glass tightened. I wondered if she'd throw it. For a moment, I wanted her to. I wanted her to lose it. But she didn't. She knew this crowd too well. Reputation was her currency. She couldn't afford another public meltdown. Councilman Rhodes coughed uncomfortably. Sam, is there something you want to clarify? She blinked. This is some kind of Daniel, or whoever you are. This is insane. Is it? I said, leaning closer. Because what's actually insane, Samantha, is that you forgot who I am. You erased me. You humiliated me. And now? Now you've invited me back. More papers. More silence. I watched her unravel in real time. The other guests started whispering. One woman asked her husband quietly if they should leave. Another man had his phone out, pretending to text, but definitely recording. This wasn't a party anymore. It was a courtroom, and Samantha was on trial. She made one last attempt to recover. Look, whatever you think this is, Daniel, this isn't the place. These are my guests. This isn't your stage. I smiled. You made it my stage the moment you slapped me in front of 20 people and left me with nothing. Gasps. There it was. Recognition flickered in her eyes like a dying candle. The room reacted like a wave moving through a crowd. Faces turned. Hands flew to mouths. People stared between us, and suddenly they remembered. That Thanksgiving. That night. The slap. No, she whispered. You're not. But I was. I'm David. Her knees buckled slightly, and for a second, I thought she might fall. But she caught herself on the armrest of a chair and stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. Not a ghost. Her past. Alive. Rich. And back in her house. And this? This was just the beginning. The next 10 seconds stretched like hours. Her lips parted again, but there was no voice left. Just that blank, stunned silence of someone realizing the villain in their story wasn't the one they thought it was. Samantha looked like she'd been doused in ice water. Her red blouse clung to her like it was suddenly 2 sizes too tight. The whole room had locked onto her like she was a painting they were trying to interpret. No more control. No more performance. And me? I stood there in her spotlight. Uninvited, unannounced, unforgettable. I don't, she finally stammered, voice trembling. This is some kind of joke, right? I walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate. The kind of walk you take toward a finish line you've crawled for miles to reach. No joke, I said. Do you remember that Thanksgiving, Sam? The one where you slapped your husband in front of your whole family and told everyone you didn't know why you married him. Her mascara had started to betray her. One smudge beneath her right eye. A crack in the sculpture. I turned to the guests. She made a show of it. Said I was a failure. Said I was the dead weight. A hush spread through the room. I walked out that night with nothing. No suitcase. No backup plan. No dignity. Samantha shook her head now, as if she could undo it, as if rewinding memory could erase the history that was alive and breathing in that room with us. But what she didn't know, I continued, was that 2 weeks before, I had been offered a stake in a startup. I declined it because she didn't believe in me. She wanted a surgeon, not a strategist. She wanted status, not sacrifice. I turned my attention back to her. So I left, and I took that stake, and I built something. Quietly, far away. And when the company sold, I didn't call you. I didn't come back to rub it in. I buried myself in work, and then I did what you never thought I could. I thrived. She tried to speak again, but her throat betrayed her. The words caught, choked, died. I could feel the shift in the room. Pity turning. Curiosity melting into disgust. Not at me. At her. You didn't just leave me, Samantha. I said, softer now. You tried to erase me. And for a long time, I thought I deserved that. Until I realized no. You were afraid. Afraid that if I ever became more than what you painted me as, you'd lose control. That hit her like a slap of her own. A woman behind her muttered something under her breath and took her husband's arm. He looked at me, gave the faintest nod, and they slipped out the door without another word. 2 more followed. Samantha could feel it happening now. Her network, her illusion of power, unraveling right in front of her eyes. I dropped one final document onto the table. The original prenup. Highlighted. Signed. Stamped. Clause 18. In the event of public humiliation witnessed by 10 or more parties, all claims to shared assets and earnings, present and future, are to be legally and irrevocably forfeited. Councilman Rhodes stepped forward now, eyes wide. Is that legitimate? He asked, glancing at the paper. Samantha lunged for it, but I was faster. I held it just out of her reach. It's legitimate, I said. Her lawyer laughed when I asked for it to be included. Said it was symbolic. Guess it wasn't. You never filed this, she whispered, finally finding her voice again. You never even mentioned it. You left. You disappeared. Because I wanted peace. I wanted to heal. And now, I looked around the room again, at what was left of her kingdom. I want closure. A man near the fireplace stepped forward. Why come back now, he asked. Why not let it go? I locked eyes with Samantha. Because she invited me. That silenced the last murmur in the room. She didn't know who I was anymore. That's how deep the lie went. That's how much she believed in her own version of the past. I turned back to her, final words hanging heavy in the space between us. This banquet, this whole illusion you built, it was supposed to save you. But all you did was send the invitation to your own execution. She stumbled back, knocked over the side table. Glass shattered on the floor. Her eyes flicked from face to face, but there were no allies left in the room. Only witnesses. She had finally become what she always feared most. Irrelevant. And I hadn't even served the final blow yet. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her lips parted as if to form words, excuses, something that would glue the pieces of her crumbling image back together, but nothing came. And in that silence, the only sound in the room was the slow fizz of champagne going flat in half-drunk glasses and the low hum of the central air kicking on like nothing had happened. Samantha stood still, teetering, one heel on the verge of giving way, her hands twitching at her sides like a puppet whose strings had been abruptly cut. I'm calling my lawyer, she finally managed, her voice shrill and cracking. You'll want to, I replied, calm as a surgeon. He'll tell you I never filed the clause back then. But after tonight, I will. She opened her mouth again, maybe to scream, maybe to beg. But then, a voice cut through the fog. He's right. We all turned. It was Monica, my brother's ex, and one of Samantha's former best friends. She was standing by the archway, arms crossed, face hard. I was there that night, she said. I watched you slap him like he was some piece of trash. We all did. You humiliated him and strutted around like you were above it all. Now you're surprised it came back around. Samantha blinked, genuinely shocked. Monica, No, Monica said flatly. You don't get to twist this. You wrote your own damn ending. I watched Samantha flinch, and I realized this was the first time someone had said no to her in years. Maybe ever. She lived so long feeding on admiration, extracting loyalty like blood from anyone stupid or naive enough to orbit her. But now, the room had shifted. The faces around her weren't mesmerized anymore. They weren't under the spell. They were awake. You think I owe you an apology? She snapped suddenly, desperate. Her voice rose, cracked wide open. You disappeared. You left me, David. I was drowning. I was trying to survive. No, I said, voice sharp. You were trying to replace me. And when you couldn't, you sold the memory of me to anyone who'd listen, made yourself the victim, told them all I was weak, a coward, a leech. Because you were, she shouted, now fully unhinged. You were working some dead-end job, dragging me down, and I was meant for more. I didn't slap you because I hated you. I slapped you because you were nothing. And there it was. The room gasped. Someone whispered Jesus Christ under their breath. That last word, nothing, hung in the air like a loaded gun. I took a slow step forward, close enough for only her to hear. You should have read the clause better, I said. Because what you forfeited that night wasn't just money or property. It was access, power. And every second since then, I've been building everything you ever wanted. While you were busy pretending, I was preparing. Her breath caught in her throat. You said I was nothing, I continued, low and cold. But I became the one man you now have to beg in order to stay afloat. And I'm not here to save you. Her mouth trembled. This is my house, I added. And I want you out by tomorrow. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Another guest, the investment banker who'd been hovering near the drinks, set down his glass and left without a word. Then another. And another. It was like watching the tide pull away from a dying shore. They didn't even pretend to say goodbye. Soon, there were only 5 people left in the room. Monica, the caterer, packing things in the kitchen without a glance toward the wreckage. 2 guests by the door, whispering and clearly deciding whether to pretend they forgot something upstairs. And Samantha, alone, cornered. The woman who had once stood above me, glass in hand, chin tilted like royalty, now stood like a lost child in a fire she couldn't put out. I watched her shoulders heave, chest rising and falling like panic was the only thing keeping her standing. And then she did something I never expected. She dropped to her knees. Not for show, not for sympathy. For real. Like her body just gave up. "Please," she whispered, staring down at the hardwood floor. "Don't do this." I stared at her for a long time, and then I said nothing, because I didn't need to. I turned and walked away. The sound of her sobbing followed me out the front door, into the cold Charleston night. But it wasn't over. Not yet. This was only the exposure. The reckoning was still coming. I didn't go back to the hotel. Not yet. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Across the old bridge, past the seafood shacks where she once dragged me on double dates I never wanted to be on. Past the empty gas station where we had our first fight about our residency applications. Past the school where I once thought we'd send our kids. She'd never wanted kids, of course. Not with me. "Maybe when I'm established," she used to say. "Maybe when I have more." Always more. Never us, never now. I was a placeholder to her. A default setting. I let the cold wind blow through the car. The Bentley purred beneath me, a gentle reminder of the life I'd built in silence. In secret. The power didn't come from the engine, it came from absence. From pulling away until she forgot my name, and then coming back when she didn't recognize the fire she started. She thought tonight was the end of it. It wasn't. Tonight was exposure. What came next would burn through every thread of her safety net until she was standing at the edge of everything she once mocked. When I returned to the hotel at nearly 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Monica. She's still at the house. Sitting in the dark. "Your name's all she's said for the past hour." She's unraveling. Good. Let her unravel. Let her sit in that silence, in the walls of a house that was never hers, drinking cheap wine she couldn't afford, wearing borrowed power like it still meant something. I opened my laptop and pulled up the legal dashboard. I drafted everything already, just in case she pushed back. But her reaction tonight? It was beyond what I expected. The public humiliation, the confession in front of witnesses, the begging, it was airtight. Clause 18 wasn't just triggered. It was detonated. All that was left now was the formal delivery. The notice would hit her inbox by sunrise. She'd have 72 hours to vacate. No grace period. The lease agreement she signed, never reading the real landlord's name, nullified under breach of contract. She'd lied about employment, income, and intent to buy. The nonprofit she bragged about? I'd already spoken to the grant committee. She forged 2 letters of endorsement. One of them from a surgeon who hadn't practiced in years. The other, an actual ghost. Dead 6 months. Easy mistake when you fake your references. Her pending application would now be flagged and investigated. By noon, the story would start circulating. Quietly, among the same guests she tried to seduce. Her empire wasn't just built on lies. It was soaked in gasoline. I was just the match. I lay back on the hotel bed, the Charleston skyline flickering in the window. I thought about how far I'd come, and not in dollars, not in distance, but in silence, in self-control, in letting her believe she'd won, long enough for the world to turn against her without ever realizing I was behind the curtain. I had become the ghost in her life. But now I was flesh, and vengeance wasn't loud. It was meticulous, cold, clean. And yet, beneath all of that, something twisted in me. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Why did you come back, really? Was it justice, or was it to watch her fall? I pushed the thought away. I'd earned this. Every damn second of it. I closed my eyes, drifted to sleep, and when I woke, the city was different. The clouds had cleared. The sky was sharp and blue, like the air had been scrubbed clean of her spell. My phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. All from her. I hit play. She was crying. But not the fake tears, the kind she used in arguments when she needed to win. These were real. "I don't know who I am without this," she said between sobs. Without the name. The attention. The illusion. Then silence. Then, "I'm sorry, David. I really am. But I'm scared. I don't know what happens next." I didn't respond. I just forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. Because what happens next? That's my story to write. And hers? Was just beginning to collapse. By mid-morning, her world was catching fire. The first to call was the Charleston Women's Health Initiative, her nonprofit board. A polite but firm voicemail from their director saying they were reevaluating affiliations, and a second email, much less polite, saying her funding proposal had been rejected due to discrepancies in credential verification. I didn't need to lift a finger for that one. Just sent the board her forged recommendation letters. No commentary, no demands. They did the rest. At 11:04 a.m., my attorney confirmed she had opened the eviction notice. Timestamped. Tracked. Legally binding. 12 minutes later, I watched from the cafe across the street as she stumbled down the steps of my house barefoot, phone pressed to her ear, her mouth moving rapidly like she was pleading with someone, maybe everyone. A flurry of calls, one after the other. No one answered. She dropped the phone, picked it up, screamed into it, slumped against the brick column by the gate like it might hold her up. The performance was over. No crowd, no applause, just her, in a rumpled robe and yesterday's makeup, outside a house that no longer pretended to be hers. And I stirred my coffee, watched the streetlights flicker from red to green. There was a time, not long ago, really, when seeing her cry would have shattered me. When I'd have run to her, apologized for her mistakes, begged to fix what she broke. But that man was dead, and the one who replaced him had learned. She didn't miss me. She missed the audience, the status, the narrative. She missed having someone to absorb her cruelty without consequence. Now, all her mirrors had cracked. I left the cafe and circled around the block. My PI, who had, by now, practically become my shadow, sent a photo of Samantha's car parked at a storage unit 20 minutes north. The caption was short, loading boxes. Alone. She was moving out. No lawyer. No backup. Not even the nephew. I couldn't help but smile. Back at the hotel, I finally called my brother. He answered on the second ring. David. He sounded unsure, as if saying my name might summon a ghost. Is it really you? Yeah, I said, staring out the window. It's me. There was a pause. Then he exhaled. Jesus, man. After all this time, where the hell did you go? Away, I said. Long enough to become someone she'd never recognize. I heard what happened last night. Monica told me everything. People are talking. Councilman Rhodes practically had a panic attack trying to explain it to the press. You dropped a nuclear bomb on her. She built the launch pad, I replied. He chuckled, then fell quiet again. Are you okay? It was a strange question. Loaded, tender, and something in my chest twitched at it. Yeah, I said after a moment. I think I am. He asked if I needed anything. A place to stay. Help moving things. I told him I was fine, that I'd be flying back out soon. I could hear the disappointment in his voice, but also respect. We'd reconnect. Eventually. But right now, I had one last move to make. Before I left Charleston again, this time on my terms, I needed to finish what I started. I waited until sunset. Drove the Bentley up the winding drive one final time. The house was quiet. The porch lights off. Her car was gone. But I knew she was still inside. I unlocked the door and stepped into the hollow silence. No music. No scent of overpriced candles. Just dust and that faint perfume she always wore. Faint now, like a ghost fleeing the walls. She was in the living room, sitting on the bare floor, knees tucked to her chest. Her eyes flicked up as I entered. Bloodshot. Defeated. But not surprised. You came, she said softly. I didn't respond. I'm leaving tonight, she continued. I just wanted to see it one more time. Before it's not mine anymore. I stood in the doorway. The light from the hallway stretched across the wood like a blade between us. It never was yours, I said. I know. She looked down at her hands, trembling. Did you ever love me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. It was a question 7 years too late. Yes, I said. But you only ever loved what I gave you. She winced, then nodded. I thought I had forever, she whispered. Turns out I couldn't even hold on to a lie for that long. You didn't just lose a house, Sam. You lost everyone. Because you built your world on being untouchable. Her eyes welled up again, but I saw something different this time. Not performance. Not panic. Regret. I destroyed everything, didn't I? Yes. Silence settled like dust. Then she looked up again. What happens now? I stepped back into the hall. Didn't answer. Some questions don't get closure. Some people don't get redemption. And some stories, they don't end in forgiveness. They end clean. And mine still had one page left to turn. The flight was booked. Private. Quiet. The kind of departure she never expected me to afford, let alone command. I was checked in, my things packed, the house signed over to my Charleston real estate firm for temporary lease, and the final court filing scheduled for first light. It was over. Almost. But there was still one loose thread. One name that kept surfacing in the last few days like a bad penny. Bryce. My nephew. The boy she seduced, then discarded like a worn-out prop. 23. Barely divorced. Still fragile enough to think her affection was love, not manipulation. I hadn't spoken to him since before the slap, but the PI's photos, those grotesque rooftop scenes, refused to leave my mind. I wasn't angry at him. I was angry at her. She knew what he'd been through. She'd sat across from him at holidays, watched him cry over his parents' divorce, saw the insecurity in his bones, and she exploited it, dug her nails into his trust and drained him dry. Emotionally, financially. It was time I made sure he understood. I found him where I expected, his friend's apartment above a liquor store in West Ashley, dim light on in the window, 2 pizza boxes stacked on the porch. The buzzer didn't work. I knocked. He opened the door wearing gym shorts and a hoodie 2 sizes too big. His face was pale, his hair unwashed. For a second, he looked like a kid again, 12 years old and scared of thunderstorms. He froze when he saw me. Uncle D. I need 5 minutes, I said. He nodded slowly and stepped aside. Inside, it smelled like microwave dinners and shame. There was a gaming console paused mid-match, a beer can tipped on its side, and a notebook open with scribbled budget numbers in the margin. He didn't say a word, just sat on the torn couch and stared at the floor. I'm not here to punish you, I started. He swallowed hard. I didn't know. She said you were gone, that you'd run off, that you... She lied, I said. He nodded, eyes glossing over. She told me I was different, he whispered, that she could be real with me, that I was better than the other men. I said nothing. She said you used her, that you resented her success, that you were jealous. Do I look jealous now? I asked calmly. He shook his head. She made me feel like I mattered, he said. I didn't even realize how much control she had over me until I saw the locks changed. I came back after work and she'd boxed up my clothes. I leaned against the table and looked at him, really looked at him. Not just as the kid who used to fall asleep during fireworks, but as the man sitting in front of me, crushed under the weight of his own poor judgment. She doesn't care about people, I said. She cares about leverage. You weren't special. You were next. Tears welled up, but he blinked them back. Why are you telling me this? Because if I don't, she'll do it again. To someone else. Someone younger. Someone weaker. I want you to understand exactly what she is. He wiped his face with his sleeve. You hate me, don't you? No, I said after a long pause. I don't. But I'll never trust you again. And I'll never forget. He nodded. Fair. I turned to leave, then hesitated. One more thing, I said. You need to talk to Aunt Denise. She's heartbroken. She thinks she failed you. He looked up, guilt flooding his face. She didn't, I added. But you have to fix it. Then I walked out, letting the door close behind me. I didn't look back. The sun was low over Charleston now, turning the horizon blood orange. The streets buzzed with Thanksgiving leftovers and Black Friday chaos. But none of that mattered. I had tied the final knot. The house was no longer hers. The reputation was scorched. The finances? Frozen. The networks? Dissolved. And now, the last thread, the one she poisoned to keep me out of the family, had been untangled. It was over. I climbed into the Bentley for the last time. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Peace. Not triumph. Not vengeance. Just stillness. A life reclaimed. But the climax wasn't behind me. No. That was coming tomorrow. At the gate. When the city finally learned what she lost. And who buried the claws that made it all happen. The morning air had bite to it. Sharp and dry. The kind that makes everything feel more real. Final. I stood at the airport gate, ticket in one hand, phone in the other, watching the city shrink behind the terminal windows. Charleston, still waking up, unaware that the last thread of her illusion had already unraveled. That was when the call came in. Unknown number. But I knew. I answered and said nothing. Her voice broke through after a few seconds of static. I know what you did. It was raw. Not the theatrical anger she used when she needed to dominate a room. This was naked. The kind of fury born from helplessness, from watching your empire vanish brick by brick and not knowing which corner to defend first. I said nothing. You think you've won, she spat. That burning my life down makes you the better person? That humiliating me in front of everyone somehow makes up for being a pathetic little man who ran away for 7 years. Still, I said nothing. I just watched the rain start to dot the glass outside, one drop at a time. You're not a ghost, she hissed. You're a coward. A child in a nice suit. You didn't build anything. You bought revenge. That's all this was. You came back not to heal, not to grow, just to hurt me. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. This wasn't just about pain. It was about truth, and it had waited long enough. I finally spoke. My voice didn't rise, didn't break. You invited me. A silence followed that hit harder than any insult she'd thrown. You sent me that invite, Samantha. You built this entire show to prove you still mattered. You just didn't check the guest list closely enough. I didn't know, she whispered. I know. I didn't recognize you. I know. The silence stretched. And then, quieter now, the mask cracking again. I lost everything. No, I said. You gave everything away. You spent years building a throne out of other people's backs, and now that no one's kneeling, you don't know who you are. Another pause. Longer. Her breath trembled through the line. I woke up this morning, and there was nothing, David. No keys, no bank accounts, no calls back. Just echoes. Just emptiness. I should have hung up. I wanted to hang up. But there was a part of me, some small, stubborn part that still remembered the version of her from a decade ago that stayed on the line. And then she whispered it. The thing I never expected to hear. I thought you'd save me. I closed my eyes. You burned the bridge, I said, quiet. And now you're surprised there's no way back. I was scared, she admitted, voice cracking. I thought if I ever let you get ahead of me, you'd leave me behind. So I stepped on you. Before you could walk away. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't reopen wounds already scarred over. I can't undo what I did, she said finally. I know that. I don't want you to. Her breath caught. I needed to know you could fall, I continued. Not for revenge. For truth. For me. To see that I wasn't crazy all those years. That it wasn't just in my head. The speaker overhead called my flight. Gate doors opening. Final boarding. I have to go. Where? Somewhere that doesn't echo your name. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. That was how I knew it was real this time. No performance. Just silence. I hung up. As I walked toward the gate, I passed a small cluster of people watching a news alert on a mounted TV. I paused just long enough to glance at the headline. Medical fraud scandal involving prominent Charleston surgeon Sparks investigation. Public statements expected today. Her name was right there in black and white. Alongside the dates. The lawsuits. The committee withdrawals. I hadn't leaked anything. I didn't have to. Truth, when cornered, finds its own voice. And as the plane doors shut behind me, I leaned back in the leather seat, eyes closed, heart steady. This was it. The fall was complete. But the landing? That was still to come. The jet soared into the clouds, Charleston shrinking beneath us like a memory finally allowed to fade. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She would still be watching the fire spread. Because for people like Samantha, the silence that follows exposure is the most terrifying thing in the world. Not the shouting, not the scandal, but the absence of admiration. The phone that doesn't ring, the camera that doesn't flash, the empty inbox where the invitations used to flood in. That's how I built the ending. Not with screams, with quiet. 3 days later, I got the message. Not from her. From my lawyer. Clause fully executed. Assets frozen. Property transition complete. Legal notice served to counsel forged endorsements. Charleston Medical Board initiated review without our prompting. Looks like the dominoes kept falling. That was the moment I realized something strange. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel like a winner. I just felt done. The story that began with humiliation, with a slap in front of 24 people and a house full of polite gasps, didn't end with applause or revenge fantasies come true. It ended in stillness, in the absence of her voice in my head. in the silence where her lies used to live. And in its place, my life finally returned. But there was one last thing. The part no one else will know except me. See, what I never told her, what I never told anyone, was that I rewrote the prenup clause 2 days after I vanished. I had already won my freedom, already met the technical trigger, but I didn't file it. I could have pulled the cord then, taken what little we had and made her bleed. But I didn't. I waited. I waited for her to write the ending. And she did. She forged documents, lied to investors, slept her way through favor, and then fell out of it. All of that happened without my interference. The clause? That was just the guillotine. She built the platform. All I did was pull the lever. 7 years. That's how long it took for truth to grow sharp enough to cut clean. And in the end, all it took was one invitation. She opened the door herself. And I walked in, not for closure, not for pity, not even for revenge. I walked in to remind her of one thing. I never needed to destroy her. She did that all on her own. As I stepped off the plane into a new city, far from Charleston, I didn't carry bags filled with trophies or courtroom victories. Just one folder. Inside it, a photo of me from the night of the slap. Eyes wide, face burning, shame stitched into every muscle. And beside it, another photo taken just before boarding this flight. Same face, but no shame. No fire on my skin. No mask to wear. Just peace. And if she's watching now, if somewhere in that dark little rental she's refreshing her inbox, waiting for a miracle to pull her back up, she won't find one. Not from me. Because I already gave her everything she asked for. A stage. An audience. And the chance to make herself unforgettable. She just never realized. The story she told for so long was never hers to end.